Okay, and we're recording. This is the first Kubernetes SIG network meeting of 2019. It's January 10th. Dinesh, why don't you start us off as the only person present with an agenda item?
Sure. So, Happy New Year, everyone. So we are trying to bring in the overlay support for Windows, and we started working on it. We have been working with a few of the partners, and there was one specific discussion. One of the requirements of Kubernetes is like all nodes can communicate with containers without NAT. It makes sense for an L3 based networks, but it is we are starting to question that requirement. And we started this discussion with Tim, and Tim suggested to bring this discussion to sig-network so that we can all discuss here. And specifically, any random node can access the pods is the biggest concern we have. And it kind of breaks some of our overlay networking requirements, such as like you can bring your own IP and an ability for any host to intervene with the VXLAN network. So, and Tim was, I don't know if Tim is on the call, but Tim was like, hello?
I'm here, go ahead.
Like Tim was saying that the local host to pod is something that is required, but any random host to pod is something that can be relaxed, but it has to be discussed here.
So that's kind of saying like host network pods are not a core bit of Kubernetes conformance.
Yeah, so that's the interesting part, right? Is any pod that runs with host networking would now not be able to access the rest of pods in the cluster.
That seems to violate sort of a very fundamental all pods can reach all pods at L3 requirement.
Wait, but I thought they were talking about changing, about not having all pods can reach all pods anyway.
No, I don't think, I do not think that waiving the all pods can reach all pods requirement is on the table.
Yes, it is not, yeah.
It's only about, and sorry, nor do I think the node on which the pod is running can reach the pod requirement is being waived either. That's for kubelet help. This is only the node A can reach a pod on node B requirement that we're talking about.
So, but why is that a problem? If all of the pods can reach all of the other pods, that implies that they all have unique IPs. So why can't the nodes reach them?
So the biggest, especially in the overlay network, is the question, right? So overlay network, the pods are in a different overlay network. The nodes are not on the same overlay space. It's on a physical network, right? So ability for any node to access a VXLAN network on the pod is without NAT is the question here.
So what have other VXLAN implementations they've done, like Flannel, was to have the node itself also be on the VXLAN? Is that a viable thing?
I don't think Flannel has done that.
Flannel does that because Flannel's got a bridge in the root namespace.
Oh, that's true. That's true. That's true. They added a VXLAN interface on the root namespace. Yeah, yeah. So that's the biggest. I mean, we don't have that. Like, we are not able to do that for Windows, and we are trying to see if we are able to find a way to have the local node access the local pod, but enabling that for every remote node is going to be a difficult thing.
I have a question, and it's because you guys are working in an environment with Windows where you know your users, and they're not the sort of users I usually interact with. And I'm mostly a network guy, but this means that I deal with a lot of people who are dealing with operational what the hell has gone wrong problems in networking, right? And I would expect it to be kind of surprising for users who are accustomed to being able to, from a node, to ping whatever pod, that they have to go pick the right node to be on for that to be true. But your users may have a different pattern.
Yeah, I mean, this is the same pattern that, yes, I agree with that statement that if they're used to diagnose failures by where they can go from any node to, so other thing, like, but in an overlay network, Windows customers are at least known to not have pod to host, like host ability to access the pods. I mean, that's a well-known thing. But I understand the requirement of some log collection where you want the local node to access the pod so that you can collect the logs for the pods and send it out through the node. But any remote node accessing a pod from any other node sounds like.
Well, I would agree, and in fact, I did agree by email, except the case of host network popped into my mind later, and so I'm glad whoever brought it up today brought it up right away, because that's the interesting case. There are reasons to have pods running in host network. Some of the reasons are specious, and some of them are legit.
And I don't think we are. If a pod is running on a host network, it should be able to have access to others. I mean, that's not we are not changing that, right?
Okay, so if a pod runs on the host network, how do you enable that, but the host itself can't? Wait, sorry, let me back up a second.
Okay.
I seem to recall there was some issue with Windows and host network at all, wasn't there?
Yes, there is an issue, and we are working on enabling that for host network mode, and I think we still haven't submitted the PR, but today it doesn't support, but we are bringing in that support.
So if Windows were to support host network mode, would you be able to satisfy that a host network pod could talk to other pods on the pod network? That question makes sense?
Yeah, it does make sense, but it doesn't work. Yeah, same issue. See, the biggest problem is in Linux, the VXLAN interface is put on the host namespace. For us, it is not. That's why even if you have the pod on the host network, it will not work.
Can you add an interface in the host network? I pardon if my knowledge of Windows networking makes me sound like a total idiot.
No, it's the VXLAN interface was for specific reason put on a different namespace in Windows, and those are the two biggest requirements of VXLAN requirements, like bring your own IP and a host not able to snip the packets on the, like, these are the two basic things. So changing that will basically involve much bigger changes on the platform. So that's why I am trying to push back on that.
So, I mean, I think there are applications, like I believe, if I recall correctly, for example, the Nginx ingress controller, at least it used to, by default, deployments would run in host namespace, but of course they have to talk to pods in order to do their ingress. And so I can imagine that will break a lot of expected use cases.
Especially infrastructure use cases.
Yeah.
The question is not on the L3 networks, right? I mean, the L3 networks, I agree. It's the overlay networks that, the overlay network by design is coming up with a different VXLAN. It's a different vSID ID, and everything is different than the host network. And
this is Jason. I just wanted to interject real quick and just kind of make a comment that I think the way that we're approaching a lot of these scenarios is based on what Windows customers are used to seeing, and it's kind of the expected behavior. And so I could think Dinesh made this point earlier, but to the comment about infrastructure roles and needing access to the host network, that hasn't been a focus really of the Windows container space to date. A lot of these workloads that we are containerizing and running are kind of lifted and shifted from VMs into a container. And so I want to make sure that we're not levying additional requirements because some use cases from a Linux perspective are being looked into when they don't necessarily make sense or hasn't been the scenario focus that end users expect from a Windows perspective, if that makes sense.
Today, like what we're talking about here is changing the definition of what conformance would mean, right? Like I'm assuming that some conformance test somewhere covers host network. Maybe I'm wrong.
There will be one
if there isn't, there will be one in about 10 minutes. I mean, or there won't be. Like, this is actually the discussion here, right? Like, is host network actually required for conformance? Because if the answer is no, then Nginx as an ingress deployment, for example, becomes a lot less tenable.
Yeah.
But
talking with people like Don Chen and Brian at the recent KubeCon, we were talking about this in context of SIG conformance and SIG tests, and basically they advised us to create a KEP which captures what are realistic tests and requirements and expectations for Windows to use. And so David, Dinesh, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe at least, to declare Windows GA and stable and as part of that KEP process, we actually would not have host network on the list. And again,
it is not.
And so all that's the guidance we've been given from kind of the SIG architecture group and community, is that we need to define what makes sense for Windows and what is realistic expectations based on what users are wanting to do. And to date, that would not include host networking.
Right. So that, I think, is the logical conclusion of this. If we're going to, if SIGArch at large is willing to bend the definition of conformance based on the platform expectations, which it sounded like we are.
There'd be different profiles. So
I'm not sure. I think it was undecided whether Windows is a profile or whether there's actually like OS as an orthogonal concept to profiles. Regardless, if there's an out here where you can be conformant as Windows without host network support working, then we're back in territory we can talk about.
This becomes another.
So another thing here, they keep talking about bring your own IP, which is certainly something that people have talked about in Linux Kubernetes as well, but we've never actually defined whether it's allowed or possible or whatever. And so I feel like we're sort of trying to merge multiple different requirements, both like technical requirements of Windows as an OS and customer requirements of Windows users together into a single thing in a way that maybe we don't want to be doing.
Sorry, I don't know what you mean by the bring your own IP feature. Like, where has that conversation been had?
They said it twice. Dinesh has said it twice in explaining why the networking works the way it does.
Well,
so what does that mean in the context of Windows or this discussion?
Yeah. I mean, at the risk of opening a can of worms, when we say bring your own IP, are we talking about multi-network again?
No, so I think Dan is trying to say that okay, let me restate things, right? So every node can access every pod without NAT. I completely agree with for an L3 based network, and it is a flat network, and Windows also honors that, and no questions asked, right? The only concern we have when we are trying to bring overlay networking support, where Windows as a platform has been supporting network virtualization for Microsoft Azure and Azure Stack, and we are now bringing that similar platform, this feature, to containers as well. And one of the main requirements is to support this bring your own IP thing, right? Not for containers, for VMs and other scenarios, right? And that was the reason why in Windows, the VXLAN interface is put in a non-default compartment, and that's what is breaking this main requirement of an ability for a host L3 based network to access a VXLAN based network for that is on the pod, that is created for the pod.
So
now,
just a second. When you say bring your own IP, you're saying you want to be able to put a subnet on that VXLAN that may conflict with other subnets on the physical network that the host is attached to,
and
on a route traffic. Because I mean,
and you can have like same IP with two vSITs on the same host, or you can also have a conflicting IP from the host IP and the pod IP. Anyway, that's not, we are not discussing that as a feature in Kubernetes. I'm not bringing that, please. Let's not, like, I just explained that why it is hard for us to move that interface into the default things.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not bringing that as a feature requirement or anything like that. I'm not doing that.
Okay.
There's something else about the environment that makes it very hard.
Yeah. I just wanted to explain the platform changes that I need to make in order for me to do this. Is really hard for me because of those reasonings, right?
Understood.
I guess what I was saying is, it's the customer requirements that are changing your technical implementation, and there are people on the Linux side who have those same customer requirements. And so maybe it doesn't make sense to think about the lack of host networking compatibility as a Windows thing, but as a, people who want bring your own IP thing or whatever.
Fair, but I just want to state that fair, Dan. agree with that, but I don't know the Linux community, and I don't know the if there is such requirement or if there's such discussions. I don't want to divert this discussion into that discussion. I just want to make progress on this, saying that I'm just for overlay network. Is there a way we can relax the requirement of like not any node to access any pod on the VXLAN network?
So Kubernetes itself doesn't have a concept of overlay versus non-overlay, right? There's just the network, which is what makes this challenging.
Yes.
If we're able to say that Windows exists without host network, then and SIG-Arch is willing to certify that, then it seems reasonable to say that without host network pod, there's no such thing as a host network pod, so this problem doesn't exist. And then the question is, if we waive the requirement for all nodes to all pods, does that apply to Linux or does that only apply to Windows? Because if it applies to Linux, then I go back to my concerns about things like Nginx deployments.
So could I make a suggestion potentially about how we might phrase this?
Yes.
Yes.
Could perhaps phrase this as if pods are not allowed to be on host network, then host network need not be able to reach pods.
Yes.
Right. So we say all pods, including host network pods, must be able to reach all other pods. However, possibly host network pods don't exist.
Exactly. If host network pods don't exist, then the fact that some host that happens to host pods can't reach some pods might be a more logical way to talk about and think about the problem, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think that's right. That was the statement I was trying to work out.
Okay.
And does anybody have objections to that?
So, I mean, one thing that popped into mind, at least on Linux, is the user space kube proxy.
Yes.
Which, I mean, I know we've been talking about deprecating for a while and getting rid of, but if we wanted to continue to support that, then we would have trouble saying.
Well,
I think that works with this answer though, because the user space kube proxy only works on Linux, and Linux is required to support host network. So,
right.
Well, I think I'm just saying the statement as it stands is not general enough to include, like, it makes it sound like if you're on Linux and you're not using host network pods, then
Casey, the statement should not be, you're right, maybe the words need to be tweaked. The statement should not be about whether there are host network pods that exist at this moment. The question is whether the platform supports host network. So if the platform supports host network, then host network pods must be able to reach other pods, regardless of host. And if the platform does not support host network, then that requirement is waived.
So a feature of host network is that it can reach all pods.
Yes.
Can you repeat that last statement? Sorry.
A feature of host network, when you say I'm adding host network to this platform, one of those required features of quote host network is that pods in that host network can reach all other pods.
Yes.
So if that's where that feature comes from, or that's where that functionality comes from, it's out of the host network feature, then we kind of sidestep the problem.
Yeah, effectively, the reason I suggested this rephrasing is we were sort of quibbling about whether nodes should be able to reach all pods. And if we look at it this way, we can basically say, look, there is not any requirement that nodes should be able to reach all pods. Right. But if you support host network, that is a consequence of that support.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think I can live with that. I wanted to bring it here to see if anybody else had other objections.
I wouldn't count it as an objection, just advice, but it really sounds to me like something that at least from my experience, is going to bite somebody in the ass at some point. But people are allowed to hurt themselves.
I agree, and it's the topic of whether this is watering down conformance for Windows or whether it's actually meeting users where they expect to be is ongoing, I think. And SIG-Arch seems to be leaning in the latter direction, that this is what users expect, so it's okay for it to be different from Linux. And frankly, if you want to run an Nginx deployment, you should pop up some Linux nodes in your cluster and run them there because they actually work.
Yeah.
Right. You're never going to have a fully conformant Windows-only cluster.
And Is there someone from Flannel that can talk to Flannel? We did find one issue with Flannel, and we want to bring that up here. Is there somebody from Flannel that can talk to Flannel?
Casey, I think Calico is as close as we come.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm probably the closest here.
So one thing we
I can
noticed,
certainly at least get you in touch with somebody if I don't have an answer.
one thing we noticed in Linux is that when a host is trying to access a pod that is in the VXLAN network, the access is going as encap packet but the reply is coming as a NAT traffic. And I was wondering, how is that not violating the requirement?
So you're saying you're getting like an asymmetric.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think the reason they did it is because
you're saying Flannel for Windows is seeing that?
No, Flannel for Linux. I mean,
okay.
We are trying to bring in the support for Windows, and what we have seen is that the cloud providers are not allowing the pod to, like the VM, to send traffic with a different MAC, I think, or different IP, I think. And they probably chose to do that. I don't know, but my question is, that's also violating the requirement. Is that something that's been discussed?
That doesn't sound like expected behavior to me from my knowledge of Flannel.
Okay, I'll probably start a thread with you and see if there's reasoning for that. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So for forward progress, do you want to send me a PR that edits the docs in question? Or tell me which doc it is and I'll be happy to edit it. I have to go find it.
I can send you the doc, Tim, but it'll be great if you can edit it.
Okay, send me by email or by Slack or one of the myriad mechanisms.
I'm question: are we going to have a mixed of Windows pod and Linux pod?
I expect that there will be mixed mode clusters.
So
yes.
Then, as long as you have Windows pod, you won't be able to support this host network paths on
No,
Linux.
the Linux will still support it.
Linux will still support them.
Oh, so basically they are in between, within that subcluster of Linux paths.
Yes, that's actually an interesting point that Linux machine, well actually, have you guys tested a mixed mode cluster of Windows and Linux machines?
Yes, we do.
And does the VXLAN work for the, like, could a Linux node reach a Windows pod?
Yes, it can.
Okay.
And it's one of our tests. Yeah.
A Linux host mode pod cannot reach Windows pod, but it can reach a Linux.
No, it should be able to reach all pods because on Linux, the VXLAN interface is in the root namespace.
Oh.
Yes, that's why it's working for them.
Right.
Finally, it comes down to that small detail.
Right. By standard routing rules, it would go through the VXLAN interface, which would then bring it to the correct host. That's interesting. That's a weird corner case. But.
I thought, can you clarify for me, do we support pure Windows-only clusters? I thought that we had a discussion previously in...
No, I don't know. Actually, the PMs can talk to me, but there's some discussions going on. But for now, we are testing where we have a Linux master and then other nodes as Windows.
But do you have any Linux nodes?
Yes, I do have a lot of Linux worker nodes.
Yeah, I think this is an ongoing discussion with SIG-Arch too.
Yeah, I don't know exactly where we are.
I think it's leaning towards a hybrid cluster model, but I'm not sure. I mean, I definitely know like Azure, our public cloud is going to be doing it that way. Not only just because we need Linux nodes, or we use Linux nodes to run the like API server and scheduler. That's one reason, but also just that seems to be the predominant use cases. People have some Linux-based services and some Windows-based services.
Yeah, I expect that that's the natural fallout of it. It'll be interesting to see if a cluster of only Linux machines or only Windows machines is something that people will be interested in. But we're going to keep our eye on that as things move forward. Okay, so send me the doc link, and I appreciate that, and I will send a PR.
Cool. And my team has another item on the agenda. Should I talk about that, Casey, or do you want to go back to the top agenda?
No, let's keep rolling with that.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Kalia, and I'm the author of that really big PR, which is going to add support to kubeproxy for overlay. So Largely, it's a very large PR, but most of the changes are contained within the WinKernel Proxier code. The only issue is that we are adding flags here, so those go into the qproxy configuration. So then the code actually spans a few different places.
Was this the PR that I said we should not do that?
You told me to use add OS flags, so I moved that already.
Okay.
And we are also, this is the first time we are adding a huge set of tests for our code. So this PR also has a bunch of tests that's been added to test all our WinKernel code. So.
Okay. Yeah, so I've added a unit test for Proxier, so that's in Proxier test.go, and I've also added some additional tests that just actually test the HNS calls. Those are separate.
Okay.
And we've been validating this to test against regression for L2 bridge, and that has been fine. This also adds support for DSR for both L2 bridge and overlay, and that has also been validated. I think the thing is this PR is kind of growing. We've re-vendored in some libraries for HCS shims, so that allows us to make the HNS calls. So we also need an additional approver for that. I think we just kind of want a timeline for this.
I don't mind the PR being big. This is sort of an ongoing discussion with SIG-Arch too about whether we should take PRs that are half cooked. I would rather a large PR that is fully cooked but is well broken up into different commits, because I can review commit by commit. But you know, the truth is, if the body of it exists within WinKernel, I'm mostly going to pay attention to the things that are outside of the WinKernel directory. I'm going to scan the WinKernel stuff for sort of obvious, egregious things, but I'm going to rely on the owners of the WinKernel directory to approve that directory. And if that's all done, then I will only look at the other parts.
Okay, the other parts are fairly minimal. Those are just updating the dependencies and adding the flags. And I had to change some of the config tests because there are new flags. So I think that's the only part that you would have to really take a look at. So that should be minimal. I can split those up into a different commit for you so that it's easier for you to.
It would be wonderful if they're like targeted, very surgical commits. That makes my life a lot easier when reviewing.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Cool. You want to ping me? Make sure it's assigned to me. I think it is.
It is.
And then ping it when you're ready for me to take a look.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Unless there's somebody else who wants to take a look.
Volunteer. I think on the
So Tigera has been also reviewing this code. So Sean has been reviewing this code from Tigera side. I don't know if he's from London. I don't know if he's attending this meeting.
Yeah, he's not on the call, but I know he has been looking at it.
Okay. So I'll hold off on my approval until the Windows, the WinKernel directory stuff is approved, but I'll take a look at the rest of it and have it queued up. The problem is that my approval means too much. I can't surgically approve.
Yeah.
Yeah, the WinKernel directory has been already approved.
Okay.
We already some internal customers and external customers tested PR pretty much. We have cooked this for almost 2 months now.
Okay.
Yeah,
great.
2 months now. Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Those are the two agenda items we had. Casey, thanks.
Awesome, thanks.
Thanks, guys.
So I think that the rest on here is from Dan, I assume, at Red Hat. Different Dan.
Which Dan?
Yeah, I have no idea who that is actually. And I was looking at the repo that they linked to, and Dan Williams has committed there, but there doesn't seem to be anyone else with a name like that. So yeah, I'm not sure what's up with this.
All right, then next.
I think that's it.
There was a PR from Dan Winship. I forget which of the Dans it was that was to change the user space proxy to support the bounded frequency runner. Was that you, or was that?
That was Dan Williams. Yep.
Okay. What I suggested in that PR was basically the user space proxy is, for all intents and purposes, dead. accept that Red Hat uses it. So I would love for you guys to put yourselves in owners and take me out. It's sort of a you break it, you bought it mode at this point.
Okay.
I mean, if you guys are okay with that, I don't have problems making changes to it. I'm just really afraid of them. And so I don't want to be on the hook for reviewing those changes. That said, this change wasn't too egregious. Like, it wasn't changing the actual proxy ports connection behavior. It was really around the running. So it wasn't too bad, but still, if I had my druthers, I'd delete that code.
So does everyone else here agree with Tim that nobody except Red Hat is using the user space proxy anymore? Or I guess, does anybody disagree?
Windows. So we do have some customers that are running in user space.
But you have your own user space proxy though, right?
Yes.
Yeah. No, we're talking about the specifically the Linux user space proxy code.
Okay, got it.
Not the general idea of user space proxying. Okay. Yeah. Good to know.
Cool. I'll throw one more thing out and see if anybody else has had similar experiences. We have had a couple of customers who have bumped into problems with services with very large sets of endpoints. And we've known for a long time that the endpoints resource was, let's just say, badly designed. I can say that because it was me. But we're starting to look at how we could possibly evolve that to be less of a scalability nightmare. If anybody else has thoughts, concerns, interest on that topic, please feel free to reach out to me. Hopefully we'll have a doc or something to share, maybe next sig-network, maybe the one after that, and we can go forward from that.
There was one more thing on the agenda as well. A question about whether we'd like to see a presumed network service mesh demo next time.
Yep, that was me.
Sure. I would love to see where it is.
Well, we actually have the whole VPN gateway story chaining working, so we'll be delighted to show that to you.
Cool. I'll add that to the agenda for next time.
Cool.
All right, I think that's all we got, unless there are other topics people would like to talk about.
So I have one question here as Francois. Is the feature IPv6 will be in this release?
You mean as it's alpha now, right? You mean as beta?
No, it's not alpha. It's alpha?
It's alpha.
Okay, I thought only the CI was pushed out.
No, I think the overall feature is covered as alpha until we have the CI work in.
Okay.
I don't think any of the V6 team are here, or at least I haven't seen their names pop up on our screen.
Okay.
There's some tumult over there. So I'm not sure what the future of that effort is right now. That's actually a great thing to bring up. Thank you, Francois. IPv6 experts needed. That project could use some extra wood chopping and water carrying to make forward progress. There's a wonderful KEP on how to do dual stack. It's actually a really well thought out KEP. And I know the guys who wrote the KEP are sort of committed to trying to move it forward, but reality often intrudes with our best plans. So if people are interested in V6 and they would like to see it make progress, I would be happy to make connections.
Yeah, I'm interested in it, and I have like pretty good IPv6 clue, and I can help out with that for sure.
Who's that?
This is Suresh Krishnan from Cologne. I can send you a mail, boy. So.
Great. This is Tim, but yeah.
Okay.
Either one of us can make the connections.
Okay, sounds good. Cool. Thanks. Okay.
To rename it Tim/Bowie.
Bowie's much better looking.
All right, I guess we'll get about 20 minutes back.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody.
Hey, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Oh, actually, I want to make a All right. So I was at the actually I gave the SIG update. So if you guys saw the slides go out, nothing new, just what we had in Contrib Summit, but even more summarized. It seems like the SIGs are moving, they have some using the GitHub projects to manage their tasks. So I was thinking we should probably see if it's possible to take our spreadsheet that we do for the release stuff and long-term planning and just use the GitHub automation. That's something I'll poke at it to see what it is and put on the agenda for the next.
I think Francois has used that quite a bit. So.
Yeah. So we could just consolidate everything onto GitHub, and then it'll be a lot more public and usable by everyone.
Okay.
That sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, the GitHub tools have actually gotten usable.
Yes,
here.
there used to be none. So.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks, Billy.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.